Hello learners, I am Dr. JI Gupta. I am Assistant Professor at Jaipuria Institute of Management, Lucknow. Today as a part of the consumer behavior course, I will be discussing about one specific topic, that is personality. So what do you mean by the personality? So let's say for example, if I simply go through the definition of personality itself, so we simply call it as a relatively permanent set of psychological and behavioral attributes that distinguishes one person from the another. So that means based on this particular only phenomena, we can differentiate between the individuals. So what kind of personality one individual possess and what kind of personality another individual possess. Why it is important for a consumer behavior course? Mainly as a marketeer, when you enter into any particular marketing domain, it's very important that you understand the individual personality itself. Whether it is your over a negotiation table, whether you are planning some product for the consumer, whatever the thing that you are doing in a marketplace, understanding others' personality is very, very important thing, and you cannot ignore that. That's why I brought this particular topic for you, and this is part of the consumer behavior course. And let us understand. So this is a very simple definition I have just put in here. It's a relatively permanent. Why I have said relatively permanent? Because it's not an absolute permanent thing. Because people do change their personality. People work upon their personality. Because if there are maybe no scope of any personality change, why at all we are discussing everything, right? So since there is a scope for a changes over there, so we are simply calling it a relatively permanent set of psychological and behavioral attributes that distinguishes one person from the another. As a marketeer, it is also our responsibility to understand our consumers' mindset as well, to understand our consumers' personality as well. Because every consumer, even if you visit to any local grocery store, the people visiting over there for the buying same sort of a product possess different sort of a personality itself, right? So we have to be very much conscious in a sense that what kind of a personality traits we are dealing with the people itself. So what are the psychological attributes? So I've just talked about two things, if you remember, psychological attributes and the behavioral attributes. So let us just go through what are the psychological attributes by which we can understand that, look, this is the psychological attributes and these are the different points that we have to understand. The first one is the personal discipline. So how much a person is disciplined in his own life? Is he, let's say for example, a grocery store, if you can see that does this person actually values a lot in terms of the timely delivery of the product itself? Does he come to you to your shop at maybe every 10 days, right? So we have to be very much careful in terms of as to is that person is very much disciplined in his approach, how much the person is self-aware, how much is what is the attitudinal awareness of that individual itself, creative thinking, love for the people, kindness that the person possesses, are very, very important. We have to understand that does that person has that element of kindness in him. Self-confidence, that consumer is having that self-confidence available with him. Is he confident enough that when he is dealing with you? So you have to understand all these things. And then the self-esteem part. So again, this is also a psychological attributes that I have just listed here. There are some behavioral attributes, and what is the fundamental difference between the behavioral and the psychological attributes is psychological attributes mainly driven by internal conscious, right? It comes out, it is there inside in the mind of the consumer itself. But when it comes to the behavioral attributes, it's an observable behavior. So anybody can observe that particular behavior. Let's say for example, communication skills, the work ethics, the problem solving approach, the teamwork, or initiative. Somebody is taking a lot of initiative, somebody is having leadership skills, somebody is having a time management. So we have to understand, now these are the observable attributes. So that's how it actually distinguishes itself from the psychological attributes itself. Let's go ahead, and now this is the very important theory, and some of you have read it before and some of you might not, but this is a very, very important theory of given by Sigmund Freud. We simply call it as a psychoanalytic theory. Many of you must be aware about the id, ego and superego. I'll just try and demystify this particular concept for you and how it is useful for the marketing scholars, how it is useful for the marketeers who are going in the market and to let's say understand about the consumer itself and how they can market their products accordingly. Please do also understand this is also useful for a branding course as well. So I'll just illustrate a little bit on that line as well. So the first part, that is about the id part. Now id is very instinctual, and it's, let's say for example, the needs for the hunger, need for the thirst, or it simply represents the unconscious source of the psychic energy. We simply call it libido. Let's say for example, whenever, let's assume that you are in a classroom, and in a class at times you feel that how about if I could have a cup of tea in a classroom itself. Now that's your id part, that coming up maybe unconsciously, maybe a childish mind you can say, maybe you wish any sort of a weird thing at any given point of time. So that part of your mind is a id part. That part of your mind is an unconscious mind. That part of your mind is a childish mind that actually gives any sort of a wish to you. Now, let's now jump into the superego part. Now, superego part actually determines what is right and what is wrong, what is ethical, what is unethical. Now, this particular part of your mind is very much culturally driven at times, a very much conscious mind, ethical mind, a mind which doesn't take a decision like, doesn't go for an instinctual taking a decision about it. So they are very much conscious about it. They evaluate every parameter, and based on that, they actually suggest you something. Now, this superego part is a conscious mind. Please do understand. These two parameters, whatever the id I have talked about, superego is talked about, I am not talking about two different people. I am talking about one individual only, one mind only. Because in one mind, this id and superego both exist. In our mind as well, both this id and superego exist over there. And both of them actually fighting for that particular thing. So let's say superego is saying, no, my point is better. Id says, no, my point is better. This is how that clash is actually going on. And this is how, and what is the actual decision? Now, obviously, that the second one, that is the ego part, which is a conscious and logical part of personality. Conscious and logical part of personality connected to reality principle. So let's say, one person sitting in the classroom got this particular feeling that, look, I should have a tea right now. Even right now, if sitting in the classroom, I should have a tea. Now, that's the id part of his mind. The superego part of his mind suggests, no, this is not the right time to have the tea. Just wait for 10 more minutes. Let the class be over. And then I'll go outside and have the tea. Now, this is the superego part. Now, what is his behavior right now in the classroom? He doesn't make any wish over there. He doesn't ask faculty to let the class over there and then. That is the ego part. That's the part which is actually in reality. What you are behaving right now is the ego part itself. I'll just give you one example so you'll be better be able to understand into this. So let's say these are the products. So there are many impulse buying we do on a regular basis. So when we go to the shopping mall, when we maybe traveling with our kids, so kids always demand. That's how I use the word childish mind. Now childish mind will always pop up. I should go for a fast food. I should go for a burger. I should go for a pizza. We should have some ice cream. We should have some chocolate. We should have some chaat. All such things actually comes up. That is nothing but the id part of your mind itself, id part of your personality itself. The ego part, which I'll come later, let me just go through the superego part. Superego is much more about the morality or compass that we are normally talking about. So products like eco-friendly products, on the left hand side you can see the eco-friendly products. On a middle you can see the product which is a cruelty free, which is a vegan products. So what vegan products or vegan cosmetics in this particular category, what they are offering? No, they are simply saying we didn't have we didn't made any sort of harm to any animal, to a human being, and this product is completely cruelty free. Now this attracts some sort of a super ego part of somebody's personality, and that attracts it towards the product itself. On the extreme right hand side, you can see one company talks about, look, if you invest, if you buy the product, then 1 rupee or 10 rupees of this particular purchase what you are making will be going for a girl child education. Now again, that pushes your super ego part of your mind to purchase that particular product. Again, this is a conscious decision. This is not an unconscious decision. These are the conscious decision people are making. Let's come to the ego part. That is much more related with the reality principle. Now, reality principle is, let's say, for example, you want to go for a smartphone purchase or a travel plans or a insurance policy. What do? One part of your mind says, look, this phone is correct. Why shouldn't you go for a iPhone? Why aren't you going for a high-end Samsung phone itself? That comes up in your mind. But suddenly you think about that whether should I go for that much of investment into buying that smartphone itself, or there can be some alternatives. So a person wants a new phone, let's say the id part, but compares features, prices, and wait for let's say discounts over Amazon. Let's say wait for a Diwali, because in Diwali we get some discounts. Now this shows the ego in action. That means delayed gratification plus rational decision making. Delayed gratification plus rational decision making. So that's how we simply call it a ego. That is the reality principle. Again, I repeat, the id and the super ego part is both is in existence in your mind only. As a marketeer, we have to understand that whether I should pop up or I should try to maybe focus more on the id part of the consumer's mind, or I should focus more of a super ego part of the consumer's mind itself, or if we should go for both the principles. So let's make it a reality principle, so that maybe our consumers should be going through the different processes, and then after the evaluation they make a purchase. Now I hope I'm able to clear this particular concept to you. This concept is very much useful for marketeers, those who are going to design the products, going to brand the product, going to create some new brand itself, what kind of positioning you want to make in the consumer's mind itself. So it's all, and especially for the course of consumer behavior, this particular concept is very, very important itself. So the id part will always pop up. The super ego part will always be a conscious decision maker, suggesting you to do something on a moral principles, on let's say integrity and all. And then where they are meeting together, where they are actually the id part is forcing you, the super ego part is forcing you, and where you are making that particular decision after having a lot of consultation, maybe a lot of pushes from each one of it, you actually end up making a decision itself. That's the ego part that we talked about. So thank you so much, everyone.